Trying to defend the foreign policy of the Biden-Harris administration is never a position you want to be in, but that's exactly what Bill Maher recently tried and failed to do on an episode of his own show. So folks, I'm Vince for Resist the Mainstream. If you enjoy our content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are new. Why should you subscribe? Because that way we can keep bringing you videos like this. And that said, just take a listen here.
The Iran deal, I mean, I have the things here. Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium was reduced by 98% until 2031. The R&D, the research existing facilities redesigned so they could not produce weapons-grade plutonium. International inspectors allowed to access any site in the country anytime they wanted. What do you want?
This
is what negotiations are. You're not going to do better than that.
No, actually, you could do a lot better than that by not.
You could, but not have the other side agree to it.
But I think sometimes what happens is our diplomats, when they're faced with the opportunity to get a deal, they think that they should just make concession after concession, and the deal itself is an achievement, when in fact, in this case, it was a political disaster. For the reason is that really none of those really weak parts of the agreement, because there was a sunset clause, were adhered to by the Iranians. As soon before the ink was dry, Bill, they said, "Hey, here's all the list of sites you can't visit." And so the verification regime was very weak. It essentially gave a regime who you cannot trust. We know that from a 4-decade plus proxy war.
You can't trust anybody. That's why you have this in the treaty.
But it was inadequate verification. The sunset clause.
Right.
But what happened was even.
And that exactly, I think, is the problem with the Iran nuclear deal to begin with. Should we be able to kind of negotiate with Iran and ideally not have them have nuclear weapons, but maybe in return you lift some of the sanctions on them, sort of normalize relations to a degree? I have no issue with that intent. But yeah, it's pretty common sense. If you say to a country, you can't develop a nuclear weapon, but the country says in return that, okay, we won't do it, we swear, but also you can't come and verify some of the sites where we could be developing a nuclear weapon, then it's pretty common sense there. You see what's going on? You know, that's not really a good negotiation. This is a point that Donald Trump brought up extensively throughout the years. It's not that he's against negotiating with our foreign adversaries. You saw in the case of North Korea, for instance, or China with the trade deals, or Russia. He's very open to trying to have these peace accords and whatnot, but you have to actually get a deal that makes sense. You don't just try to do a deal for the point of, hey, look, I accomplished something, and then years later, in retrospect, as you can see, the situation with Iran has not exactly gotten any better. But now take a listen as we relate this entire conversation to the Biden administration and their policies itself.
Worse than the agreement was the sanctions relief that went along with it, that transferred, $100 billion, more than $100 billion to the Iranians. And you know where that money went? Into the coffers of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, and then increased the stipend of Hamas, Hezbollah, the proxy army in Syria, the Hashtag-Shabi militias in Iraq, and the Houthis. And then when the Biden administration came in, they went back to that same playbook with actually kind of the same people. They undesignated the Houthis. How did that work out? They didn't enforce the Trump-era sanctions. That resulted in the transfer of about $80 billion into those coffers again. Remember, there were $6 billion sitting in gutter to be transferred to the Iranians on the eve of the October 7th heinous attacks against Israel. So I think the words you used, feckless, that applies to the Biden administration.
I have one more important question I have to ask you.
Right, exactly. And let me be clear, I'm not some type of neocon. I'm not arguing against the idea that you should try to bring down the temperature with a lot of these foreign regimes that America has issues or problems with. So I would be more than happy about a good deal with Iran, but we also have to fairly assess, has it actually worked? And in the decades since the Iran nuclear deal essentially became a thing, have relations with Iran became better? From everything I can see, I look around, it seems to be the exact opposite. The tensions continue to rise. They're continuing to do the stuff that the United States doesn't want them to do. And it seems to me they're still developing a nuclear weapon, etc., etc. So this is exactly why I look at the foreign policy of both Biden and Obama and say, yeah, objectively, your approach to Iran has not worked because you tried to appease them, whatever, but then did it translate to peace? No, it didn't. Now, I'm not saying that I want to go to war with Iran, but you have to somehow figure out a way to get closer to peace while actually getting closer to peace, right? Don't just say you're going to give Iran all these appeasements and then in return they can keep doing all the things that you're trying to stop. So that's exactly our point here. And in a second, we will react to Bill Maher now shifting the discussion to Donald Trump and some of the failed Democrat tactics to stop him on the same episode of Real Time. But first, a word from today's sponsors over at Goldco. Folks, time is running out to protect your savings, and that's why we here at RTM have partnered with Goldco. They can help you safeguard and diversify your retirement with gold and silver IRAs, which provide a critical shield against inflation and dollar devaluation. Folks, you see the state of the world right now, so do not wait. Goldco makes it easy to roll over your 401k or IRA into a gold or silver one. Fast, tax and penalty free, plus for a limited time, you can get up to $10,000 in free silver when you open an account. So act now. Get your free information kit at rtmgold.com. Again, that is rtmgold.com. Protect your financial future at rtmgold.com. All right, so here's Bill Maher going off fully into the Trump derangement syndrome. Take a listen.
Was the judge in Trump's hush money trial right to delay sentencing? Oh, yeah, that happened today until November 26th in order to avoid interfering in the election. Man, all those trials and nothing happened. Nothing. It was going to...
They indicted him and they wanted to try him on a political schedule. They literally, if they could have, they would have had him in courtrooms from March to October, a presidential candidate of the United States, and it's just not how the court system works, thank God. This thing shouldn't be sentenced now. It was absurd. They took a misdemeanor that the statute of limitations should have expired on, and they bootstrapped it up to 34 felonies. And wanted to sentence him to jail for it. I'm not a huge Trump guy, but this I think is absurd and wrong.
Look,
Well, look, a common theme I think you're seeing here in this video is that nothing they try to do ever actually works, right? Whether it's negotiating with Iran or trying to use the lawfare system against Trump. You know, maybe our opponents are not necessarily as competent as we like to think they are. Just saying.
the larger issue obviously is January 6th, right? And the problem is with the immunity decision, history is really clear. If you don't hold people accountable when they indulge in political violence, then you get more political violence. And I'm really curious about do you think conservatives will end up supporting a constitutional amendment to overturn the immunity decision if a Democrat is president? I wonder if they will.
I think the way these kind of decisions work, we saw it with the independent counsel statute decision that the Supreme Court has. In Washington, eventually this stuff always comes around and bites the other side. So right now, the Democrats are so upset the Supreme Court has done this. Then if Kamala Harris is elected and some Republican prosecutor somewhere in the middle of red America wants to indict her and prosecute her for some official act, the Supreme Court will say no, and Democrats will suddenly, wait a minute, maybe that decision wasn't so outrageous.
Yeah,
okay,
I'll tell you,
after
what
all.
we've seen is this tendency on both ends of the political spectrum to score partisan points at the expense of confidence in our institutions.
Yeah, but Trump really does commit crime. Let's not forget that little part of it.
And according to Bill Maher, the other people in our government don't. Well, that's the typical Trump derangement syndrome, right? He must be the worst guy in the room. It's frankly never really that true.
That's right. We're 60 days out from an election, and I think we've normalized this a little bit, and it's far too freaking dangerous.
He really does commit crimes is one thing, and two, if the positions were reversed and a Democrat did this, not only would the Republicans go after him, but they would have done it instead of what the Democrats do. Talk about feckless, General. This is feckless. You had 4 years to bring 4 trials, and we get none of them.
And it's because they were afraid of politicizing it. Look, that's the thing, is that if Democrat did what Donald Trump did, you would be opposing him totally. And by the way, so would I.
Okay, so...
And I think that's the issue.
No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. Because you want to talk about the Clinton Foundation, Nancy Pelosi's insider trading, the Biden family dealings that, yes, do seem to implicate Joe himself, that just never really got looked into. What do they have to say about it? We know that's not true. Here's the point, guys. Bill Maher sometimes says things that are true or seem to reflect a degree of common sense, but at the end of the day, he is so Trump deranged that when it comes to the topic of anything relating to him, frankly, he cannot have a fair or balanced take on any of it. So that said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And until next time, I've been Vince with Resist the Mainstream. Peace.